Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's training. Today, we're going to be covering Shelterpoint entries. So it's important to note that particular projects who will be utilizing Shelterpoint are only projects such as emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing or other permanent housing projects. Rapid rehousing projects, homeless prevention, street outreach, and services only do their data entry primarily through ClientPoint. So before starting your Shelterpoint entry, it's important to note to change your enter data as to the appropriate project that you're doing data entry for. And then you can move on to the Shelterpoint module. It's on the left side of the screen. So clicking on Shelterpoint will bring up the shelter inventory. You'll see the provider that you're entering the data for, and then a variety of different boxes within the Shelterpoint dashboard. We're going to click on the View All box, and then you'll see and note that your bed list will populate for you to select the appropriate bed to put your client in. Some bed lists are very specific, others are very general, so it might not necessarily matter what bed you choose. But we're going to pick bed number 1. If you hover over this little green plus sign over here, you'll see that the word check-in populates, and this is where you're going to check your client into Shelterpoint. So click on the green plus sign, and you'll note that the client search box pops up. If you have looked at other trainings within our webinar series, you'll note that you have to search for a client before you enter them into any project. We really need to search for the client first to ensure that there's no duplicates, or there's not any duplicates in the system. So today we're going to search for Angela Smith. We're going to be sure to fill in the data quality elements of whatever data we're going to be entering in our search. And then we're going to click the search button. So when the system searches, it'll bring up possible matches in the client results section. So we're going to check Angela Smith's information against the 2 Angela Smiths that are already found within the system. If this is not your client and neither one of these Angela Smiths have these social security numbers or date of births, you're going to click add a new client with this information. But for today's purposes, we're going to choose one of the Angelas that's already in the system. We're going to choose Angela T. Smith, and we're going to click on the green plus sign. You'll note your unit entry data populates with today's date. So today is April 15th. However, if the client actually came in yesterday or maybe last week, you will change the date to the appropriate date for the entry, and then continue with your Shelterpoint entry. You also have these data elements of supplies given. You might have a locker number. There's a codes and notes section. So if you had a note specifically about the entry that you wanted to put here, you could. You can also put a client's photo in here during the Shelterpoint check-in if you have access to take photos. There's the area for incidents. So if there's an incident to note during the entry, you can add incidents here. So please reference the incident reporting section of the trainings to go over incidents and how to add one of those. You also have a household overview. So if you open that up, you'll see household related information. So if you have changes that you need to make to this household for Angela, maybe Robert moved out, or maybe there's new members of the household, you can manage the household here. So please reference the household creation or household management trainings in order to change that information. As you move down the assessment, you'll see household members. So here are all the household members that are currently associated with Angela's household. You can check the entire household in at one time by clicking on or checking these boxes next to the client names to put them in. And then the second thing you have to do is assign a unit to each one of these people. So we're going to assign a unit to Robert. We're going to choose unit 2. We're going to assign a unit to Amy. We're going to put her in 3. And then we're going to assign a unit to John. We're going to put him in number 4. So this just means that all of these members of the household are now assigned to a unit within the Shelterpoint entry, and they all are connected to this entry. The next thing is the release of information. So adding the ROI during the Shelterpoint entry is extremely important, making sure that the clients are signing the ROI so that you can share information and information can be visible across the system, specifically with the purposes of coordinated entry, or for the purposes of coordinated entry. So please reference the release of information training to find out how to add an ROI and details about the ROI process. Next is the entry data. So you have the provider and then the type that's assigned to this provider, and then you have the assessment that's assigned to this provider for the Shelterpoint entry. So you can reference the universal data element section or training and income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, and disabilities to fill out these entry stay data and entry assessment data. And then you're going to save and exit once you fill out all of that assessment information for Angela. So all of that information was for Angela only, but next we have to make sure that all household members have their assessments filled in and completed. Unfortunately, with Shelterpoint, we cannot switch independently between client and other household members like you can in ClientPoint assessments and entries. Here you have to actually fill out the assessment for the person, save and exit, and then go back into the second household member. So you'll go into Robert's entry. You'll see he has his assessment that's empty, so you'd have to fill in his assessment information and then save and exit. And the same for the other two information. So if Robert is an adult, you'll fill out adult related information, so 18 and older. So if there's a child, also if Amy's a child, and you fill out information that's pertinent for data entry for individuals who are under 18 years of age. And that is how you do a Shelterpoint entry. Thank you.